Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Here we have a fine example of the problems with agency theory, or more precisely, why you should have your own understandings of ethics and core guiding philosophy and sense of morality to be able to push back against things which you're told what to do. So this is the case with any job or anything that you wish to endeavour upon, and you'll have people in higher positions informing you of what to do. Most of the time this will be useful advice on how to perform better at your job. No worries at all. However, at the risk of making things difficult for your employer or higher up, you should also understand your own sense of morality. Understand that your interactions will not only be with your boss, but also with other people as well. And chances are there will be at least some sort of customer-facing role, that you will have interactions with other people who will appreciate or not appreciate your interactions with them, your social skills, your people skills, if you will. And that is where you will at least get some semblance of appreciation. Where this is most vital is, of course, when it comes to the protection of children. And that's what we're focusing on today. With a detective who avoids sack for gross misconduct despite failing to properly investigate claims a schoolgirl was raped by multiple men in Rotherham in 2007. Yeah, it's coming out again because, as you know, the legal system takes fucking forever in order to actually find out what happened and make its sentencing accordingly. So, despite this being from the 2014 report, 7 years ago, it's just slowly working its way through the court now. And yes, that 2014 report was from between 1997 and 2013, that investigation. So the investigation itself that was looking at the reported offences and what was going on, that time span was 16 years. And yet, it's taken 8 to seem to get actually into the weeds of it, if you will, instead of just the first off wave of resignations, which personally I wouldn't say a resignation is really good enough when it comes to the crimes here, because there is of course the argument of being complicit in a crime, and that's one thing if you're an accessory to the crime, but it's quite another if you are the legal system and you are failing the victims and not upholding the law, a very morally justified law after all, when it comes to the protection of children, especially for the crime of child sexual exploitation, which is now known as CSE, because it is far too common. So the kid in particular, in Hampshire, kept his job following verdict by disciplinary panel in Sheffield. Yes, instead he should have a final written warning, instead of being dismissed. Now, I'm not going to try and say this was the right decision. I'm not. However, just to explain the facts of the case, the point of that is he was very junior at the time. He was doing what he was told. It's a systemic problem with the police force, or at least at the time, and he's been excellent since then and been able to do a much better job. So, the question for all of you, really, which I am very much intrigued to hear your answer of, is if somebody starts a job and the company that they've joined has moral failings in one way or another, at what point in their career should they then call it out? Because if it's too early on, surely then they're going to be ignored and they're going to lose their job and not be able to change anything. But of course, if it's too late on, then they've become embroiled with a corruption that they were hoping to fight against. It gets even worse, of course, when this is the police force, because, hey, you know, if you're trying to call out problems created by a foreign culture, which is quite common amongst a particular ethnicity, then your job's on the line straight away, and that is most certainly understood. However, it only got this way because people wouldn't call it out any earlier. So it's a double-edged sword there. So the most simple and straightforward way is to simply always be true to your morals and philosophy. And it might be difficult for a year or a few years, but in the end, you'll build up more meaningful relationships and make something worthwhile. Even if it isn't in the police force. And surely at that point, then it comes to whistleblowers. if you're there, and you've just started, and you go, whoa, hang on a minute, it seems like there is quite a serious crime being recorded here, and we need to investigate into this fully, and punish those who are responsible and hold those accountable, whether that be a false allegation, as it could be, or an actual real crime. Either way, an investigation should be made on such a serious claim, and the punishment should be handed out accordingly. But that is not what happened here, of course. Despite him, driving the girl around, this in particular, trying to help her identify where she was when things happened, and she couldn't really because, of course, she was plied with drink and alcohol and drugs, then there wasn't a lot more he could do at the time, except, of course, keep her up to date with the investigation and try and get more details out of her as the investigation got underway and give her the support that she needed. He did, of course, provide a forensic examination in order to try and garner DNA information to be able to corner the perpetrators, which is true. So he definitely did do part of the job required. But when it comes to such a big failing on such a big level, when it comes to something that is so systemic as they say, in that case, who is responsible? And surely everybody has some sort of responsibility. There is, of course, the understanding of the agent theory, which is the people who just do what they're told if they're told it by a person in a superior position, similar to the lab coat syndrome, which is that you'll do what you're told. If someone is wearing a white lab coat, then they must have authority and know what they're talking about, in which case you must definitely obey and do as you're told. But just because there is an understanding that this is the case, it doesn't mean that it should be accepted. In fact, having done the research into it, going all the way back to Stanley Milgram, from the 60s, I believe it was, then we should really know better by now, and that should be imprinted into people in order to understand, these things can happen, and they can happen very easily. So perhaps have a greater free flow of dialogue and information in order to realise what is going on. And it is that freedom of information which runs counter to Karen's, essentially, because it isn't pushing a narrative, believe it or not. It's actually saying, how about we be transparent with everything that's going on here? Okay? That's all we want. And if you're happy with what's going on, well, that's completely fine. And if you're not, then maybe we should make some changes here. But that's it. That is it. It's just freedom of information. That is what we're looking for here. If difficult questions can be asked, and they can be answered in a pleasing manner, then job done, case closed. But if difficult questions can't be asked, or they can't be answered in a pleasing manner, then further steps need to be taken. And that goes from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. Everybody, in every walk of life, actually needs to be able to be ready to not only ask those questions, but also answer them. And that's where the failing happened here. So, at the DC Hampshire, Ian is the first officer to face disciplinary hearing following child sexual exploitation scandal, from the 2014 report detailing how 1,400 children were raped, trafficked and abused within our own British Isles, of course. And the estimates now, over the few decades that it's been going on, actually ups it to over 1 million. Yeah, not 1,400, but multiply that by 1,000, near enough. It's like the same amount to the power of the same amount. It's ridiculous that you can say there were that many failings times that many failings. Yeah, and then that's the estimate that we're working with now. And yet to try and say, yeah, well, I mean, there were resignations at the time, in which case this guy who's one of the few that is still with the force and was actually with them at that time, he shouldn't be held personally responsible for their failings that were more systemic. So okay, well, if not him, then who? And what differences have actually been made? What systemic changes are there if you're saying that that's the problem? Instead of just trying to get a memory hold and pass the blame around until people forget about it, what actionable steps are going to be taken? If you're saying this is actually a problem, and you're admitting that, then do something about it. Whenever you admit a problem, even if other people don't think it is, you need to take actionable steps in order to prove that you actually think that is a problem. Otherwise, you don't, and you're just trying to placate people that are easily placated, which isn't actually helping true victims of whatever the problem is. Just giving us word salads is going to do nothing in helping people not only avoid these things in the first place, but then of course find justice for those who suffered in it beforehand. And that is really what we need to be focusing on. So if we still have the same problems that we did at the time of, we can't go into that community or question them because for a start we're worried we're going to be attacked because it's a no-go zone and you kind of white there after dark, but also because we don't want to be called racist or Islamophobic, then nothing's changed, even though the report's been out 7 years. And that's not good enough. Put bluntly, it's simply not enough to try and say, yeah, there was a problem, we've investigated it, it's not really their fault. So, okay, cool. So maybe let's stop the blame game. If you don't want to put any blame to it, alright, let's stop that. How about we fix it then? How about that? How about we can avoid the investigation into who's done the things wrong if we can actually find a way to do things right? How about that? How about? But at the minute, it just seems to be, let's just pass the buck around, yeah, and then find people that can be scapegoats, but of course we don't want to ruin their lives too much, so let's just be gentle with the punishments that we give. And then in the end, nobody's happy at all. Someone's got to stain on their record for something that they don't think that they deserve, and if they thought that it really was a huge problem when they joined the police force in the first place to serve and protect, as they say, then they should have called it out straight away, as Ian should have done. Yeah, he's not solely responsible, definitely not, but anybody who is complicit in this or an accessory of this also needs to understand that they should take personal responsibility for this part in the atrocity, however meagre or minor that it was. As an example, as an explanation to everybody else who sees this kind of thing going on, to say, yeah, no, we're actually not going to be okay with that. And the same goes for yourselves in any jobs that you guys have and any employees that you're working with, to speak up in the same way. Say, you don't really appreciate this, whether that be quotas or forced association or speech requirements, that kind of thing, to just say, actually, I've got a bit of an issue with this, and this is as I've laid out. And of course, being my audience, you'll also develop your personal skills in order to be an integral part of that job base, and they won't want to lose you, and they'll respect what you have to say. So it's a win-win, really, that you've made yourself irreplaceable, and also worth listening to. And that is two places where DC Hampshire here has failed. And it cannot be understated just how vital it is, given that he failed on something as vital as child sexual exploitation. One of the worst crimes to one of the most innocent and naive victims. There's a reason there used to be the death penalty for these crimes. But hey, that's all been skimmed over because the perpetrators are brown. But that's it for me. Let me know, guys, things down below. I am backing up all of these on BitChute, but they take forever to process. But either way, let me know, guys, things down below as to whether this guy should have been sacked, or if go, well, no, I mean, it's not really his fault, and he was doing the best that he could do at the time, and it's other people that should be held responsible, and we need to go after them. Or if you think, yeah, cool, the investigation's gone on for long enough now, how about we fix it instead of just trying to find out who to blame? Alright? Because maybe the whole thing of these investigations and bureaucracy is part of the problem, because people are concerned about being called racist because of the bureaucracy that's been set up and this red tape, and they're kind of doing the same thing again here. So how about we cut that shit and just fix it? Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you have to say. And of course, as always, until next time, have a good one.